Yeah, so have your phones ready because we're still going to ask you to pull up the QR codes because the answers to the questions that we're going to ask for your answers to are only going to appear when you pull it up on your phone. So we're going to probably call out to some of you for answers if we can't get them to appear live on the screen. But why don't we go ahead and get started because it's at the 2:31 hour. So hi everyone, welcome to the session on USDA's Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. We're really glad to have you all here. I'm Brian Gussie. I'm the first permanent director of USDA's Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production. Prior to this role, I served in USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service for about 23 years. I started this position in April of 22. It's been 2 years. Wow. Today's session is really to give you all a brief overview of our office, what we're all about, why we exist, and how we're here to help. I'll start a little bit by just saying that the Office of Urban Agriculture and Innovative Production was authorized under the 2018 Farm Bill. As you heard earlier today from PBJ, things got it was a slow start. I was brought on as the first permanent director in April of 2022, but the office was kind of in the process of being stood up when I was onboarded. Leslie, who comes from NRCS, who you'll meet in just a minute, was really our first permanent member of the staff. And after my arrival, I created a staffing pattern and brought on, in addition to Leslie, 5 other individuals, Marcus Holliday being one of them. So from the period about May 2022 to October 2022, we onboarded the permanent staff. And from then, we've really been a functioning office. So as you heard earlier today, being able to grow nutritious food locally is a matter of national security. And our office is here to make sure that urban producers and innovative producers around the country have the resources that they need to contribute to the nation's food supply, to nurture and build strong and resilient communities, to prepare and encourage the next generation, and to connect people to our natural environment. Like I said, we're a brand new office, but as we all know, urban agriculture, and this contradicts some of the statements that we heard earlier today, urban agriculture is not anything new. We've been growing food in cities and urban areas since our independence from Great Britain. My family, I come from St. Louis, my family is 4 generations in St. Louis of urban, suburban producers. I grew up understanding agriculture not to be the large corn and soybean fields in central Missouri. I grew up understanding agriculture to be the 7 acres on which my family grew produce and sold at the historic Soulard Market in downtown St. Louis, if you're familiar with St. Louis. So urban agriculture is something I know. I've heard from my mother, I've heard from my mother's family, my grandfather's family, and my great aunts and uncles. It's not something new, but it seems to be new to USDA. And our office was stood up to change all that. We know that urban producers and innovative producers are a key part of the food network, the food security of a particular community. Our job here at OUAIP is to ensure that all agencies throughout the Department of Agriculture work with us to identify, prioritize, and remove barriers that exist between well-established USDA programs and those urban and innovative producers who for far too long have been left out of the picture. I think we're going to go to the next slide. Kind of want to start here with, oops. Oh, there we go. I want to start with this slide before I turn things over to Leslie and Marcus to really take a deep dive into our office. Because I wanted to just focus on those 2 words at the top of that screen, urban agriculture. We get questions every day from producers, stakeholders, and from USDA employees. What is urban agriculture? How do you define urban agriculture? Well, at USDA, we don't actually define it. We use urban as a descriptive word, but not as a definition. We know that the moment you apply a definition, someone, some group, some individual, some farmer will be excluded. And we don't want that to happen. Urban agriculture is everywhere in this country. It's all relative to the community in which that operation exists. We describe the setting rather than define the characteristics. It could be a place where food is being grown in what would otherwise be a residential, commercial, or industrial area. It could be in a city as large as New York City, a city as large as Baton Rouge, or a town as small as Kennebec, South Dakota. And we put Kennebec, South Dakota up there because in the middle of that little town, there is a community garden. Because people in that town in South Dakota also live in a food desert. They don't have access to fresh, nutritious food year-round. So our job is to make sure that those producers in all of those towns and townships and cities and villages have access to USDA, that they know what USDA is, and that they have access to those programs, both technical and financial assistance. So urban agriculture is meant to be inclusive. It's relative to the size of the community where food needs are not being met. It could be from Detroit to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, from LA to Albany, Georgia. So I want you to think about that as we go through the presentation. We have grantees in all corners of the United States. We have them in the most densely populated metropolitan areas and in some of the smaller townships around the country. So without further ado, I'm going to turn things over to two wonderful senior staff here, Leslie Glover and Marcus Holliday, and they'll take you through a deeper dive into what our office is all about.
All right, how's everybody going? Enjoying the conference so far? All right, hopefully everybody got some good lunch. I know the food down there is probably not as good as the food at Oakland Avenue Farm yesterday for the folks. Hope you guys will get some grub nonetheless. All right, so as we mentioned when we started, when Brian started, we are having a little bit of technical difficulties with our polls. We had several throughout our presentation. This is just the first one up, so it was designed for you all to be able to take a picture of the QR code. I know there's also some sheets out there for everyone to take a picture, and your answers to populate on the screen automatically, so we can see and have some interaction here. But that may not work, so we'll pivot. We'll work with it. We might have you just shout out some answers. But the first question up, we just want to get an idea of who's in the audience. So I want to ask what city or town, state or territory everyone's from. So if everyone could take that survey, and we can actually check it too again. We might get lucky and it might pop up.
Yeah, some more of these answers are going, but we maybe not on our show.
Yeah.
In the meantime, shout out where you guys from. Houston.
I know we got some folks in here from Detroit. Who's all from Detroit? Okay, what up, though? I'm not from Detroit. Y'all don't have to give me a pass, but what up, though?
How about Baltimore? Anybody? Washington, D.C.? All right.
Okay.
St. Louis? All right. Kansas City? Nope. Oakland, California? L.A. Just California? Washington State?
Las Vegas, Nevada.
Nevada. That was cool. How about Wisconsin? New York? Virginia? All right.
What about any U.S. territories? Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, American Samoa. Okay. Look, we all here. It counts.
There we go. All right.
New Mexico.
Okay, New Mexico in the house. All right.
Ohio. Great.
All right, from all over. So thank you all for being here. As Brian mentioned, our programs and folks that we help our customers is all across the nation, all U.S. states and territories. So who's OUAIP, our office? So As Brian mentioned, I'm Marcus Holliday. I coordinate all the efforts for our Federal Advisory Committee, and then Leslie Glover here is our program manager. Not here with us today is our leads for our grants and agreements. So we have Jose Jimenez, who heads up our Urban Ag Innovative Production Grant Program, Sharante Williams, and Sean Potts, who takes the lead on our compost and food waste reduction agreement program. And then not here with us today, but was supposed to be sadly, Nina Bhattacharya. She's our urban agriculture specialist. She does many things for our office, but most notably, she takes the lead on the People's Garden Initiative. Again, Leslie Glover and myself. And last but not least, our reigning chief, Brian Gussie, who we are very happy and give thanks to for making our office fully remote by design so we can get out into the communities that we serve and also learn how we can serve you better. So thank you all for being here again.
All right, so anytime we give this presentation, we usually like to kind of take a step back. I think probably most people in this room know a little bit about the history of the USDA, but to kind of give you a context about our office, how we are situated in the bigger picture of the USDA, I just wanted to let everybody know, of course, we are the People's Department. We have been that since the 1800s, back when Abraham Lincoln started the department, and we're that still. Even though agriculture in the nation has changed considerably, the mission that we have within our office just allows us to really say that we are the People's Department, because now we're really serving agriculture at every level, every size, every location. And so we're really, really proud of that fact. I didn't know if everybody knew this or not, but the USDA is basically like a multinational conglomerate, right? There's over 100,000 employees for the USDA. So just think about that. I'm a pretty big football fan, so I always think about the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa. They have a really good football team. So the USDA is as big as Tuscaloosa, Alabama, on a big football day when you have all those people in the stadium. It's a lot of folks. And so if you can imagine, probably not everybody in that stadium knows what everybody else in that stadium is doing at any given time, right? And so the USDA is a little bit like that too. You know, we come across producers, stakeholders that say, oh yeah, I talked to somebody from the USDA, do you know so-and-so and so? It's like, not exactly. 29 agencies and offices, and actually we need to update this. We actually have 30 because our office actually became the 30th agency and office within the USDA. Over 4,500 locations within the United States and abroad. Some people don't realize, but the USDA has a considerable amount of offices abroad. And then we have outlays of over $200 billion annually and growing. And so the USDA obviously is a very big agency. And then within in recent years, obviously because of the creation of our office, we began to realize that there's been a little bit of a gap between the technical and the technical and financial assistance that was given to urban producers. And so our office is here to kind of really close that gap. So when you look at USDA, sometimes you'll hear things like mission area. I just wanted to give you all a quick peek into that. There are many offices within the USDA, and that's what you see over here on the right side. These are all offices that work at a department level. And so all of these offices here on the right work across the USDA in all 29 agencies. And I want to highlight that because our office is one of those too. So we work with every agency within the department, but we're really unique too in that we are also situated underneath the FPAC mission area. And the reason why that is because our former chief, Chief Norton, actually had the good vision to actually get our office started. He saw that our mission was well aligned with what NRCS and really FPAC was doing. And so the chief at the time allowed NRCS to take on that challenge. And we've been there ever since. So when you get look back, kind of pull the cover back a little bit, within NRCS, our office is then situated right underneath the chief. And so here's Chief Terry Cosby. I don't know if everybody in the room is familiar with Chief Terry Cosby, but he is really a visionary. He was really one of the early adopters for urban agriculture and urban conservation in Cleveland. And in fact, I think has been given credit for being one of the first, if not the first, state conservationists to actually initiate the High Tunnel Initiative in Cleveland, Ohio. And so he has been a great sounding board, a great person of vision. And when he first started, he pulled us all into his office and was like, this is going to be one of my top priorities. And so you can see we're aligned with some of the other top priorities. Urban agriculture equity is one of his big priorities, as well as climate. All right. So, what do we do? So that's kind of like who we are. That's kind of where we're situated. But what do we do? So our office has been given the statutory authority by Congress to work with all of those smaller producers that we've been hearing about today have been often overlooked. And so our mission goes all the way from community gardens and farms. We go to rooftop farms, vertical production, green walls, hydroponics, all of the ponics I call them, aeroponics, aquaponics. We do indoor farming. And then another big part of our mission is also to work with food waste reduction and composting. And so we have a program, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but we have a really important program that is really looking to reduce the amount of waste and loss that we have in our food system. You know, throughout this conference, we're going to be hearing about our need to feed the world and to feed Americans. But if you think about it, we actually have enough food now to feed everybody. We waste just as much food and lose just as much food as we consume. And so this program is one of the ones that's really looking at helping communities to figure out strategies to be able to mitigate some of that waste and some of that loss. And then, you know, if we're not able to feed people with that food, if we're not able to upcycle those products, then why can't we compost it? Why are we filling up our landfills with a bunch of organic material? It just makes no sense from so many different perspectives, whether it's climate, whether it's just space, and the energy that's going into, you know, producing that food, and it's just sitting in a landfill. So, and of course, we know that compost is really good for soil health for all my NRCS folks that are in the room. All right, so we got another quick survey. What kind of organizations do we have here affiliated with us in the room? And you'll see why this is going to be important here in a minute. But as we've heard several times today, USDA has always been traditionally working with industrial scale agriculture, but our office is really unique in that we've been given a pretty broad latitude to work with a bunch of different organizations. I was sitting in the FSA session just a little bit earlier today, and one of the big questions came up. Well, why can't FSA do more with nonprofit organizations? Well, part of that's because they're statutory authority. They don't have the statutory authority to do some of those things. But just holler out. Is anybody here from local government? Any representatives from local government? School districts? Just any more? Nonprofits, very good. What about for-profit business? Oh, yes, wonderful. All right, any school representatives? Oh, museum? Extension, of course.
Any hospitals? How about correctional facilities?
I work with it.
Great. How about veterans groups?
Higher education? Higher ed. Okay. All right, so we got a good cross-section. All right, Marcus is going to take us a little further into our statutory authorities.
Yeah, we see some folks sitting in the back of this one. Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Yeah, there's one up here. All right, yeah, we got a few more up here, so we'll pass them back. But we're loving this turnout. So, loving this turnout. All right, so Leslie went over our mission. So kind of just to elaborate on that, here's just a quick diagram of our responsibilities of our office. And they can be organized into 6 main areas, and we'll go into detail for each one of these in just a second. But as you can see here, we have our Federal Advisory Committee. I'm sure probably most folks in the room are familiar with the Urban and Suburban County Committees. Not everyone knows about the Federal Advisory Committee, but we also have one of those. Talk about that later. Our Compost Food Waste and Reduction Agreements or Program, also known as CFWR. We have our Urban Agricultural Innovative Production Grants, also known as UAIP grants. And let me just pause real quick. You got to cut us some slack on our acronyms. We know they're horrible. We cringe all the time, and we talk about this and laugh about this in our staff meeting. We wish we had, a cool acronym like SNAP or, these other cool acronyms. But, we blame Congress for that. Don't tell Senator Stabenow I said that. Okay. People's Garden Initiative, of course. We're also doing a lot of USDA coordination, connecting a lot of dots. Leslie is responsible for a lot of that, as well as Nina and the others on staff. Last but not least, we're also doing a lot of external engagement with stakeholder relations, including other federal agencies, nonprofits, private industry, schools, and more. So I'm going to start off with our Urban Ag and Innovative Production Grants. And we don't have a poll, but I just want to ask, just by a quick show of hands, are there any recipients in the room of, okay, what state?
Mexico.
Mexico?
New Mexico.
New Mexico, okay, anybody else? Arkansas, okay. Colorado. Okay,
I
nice.
know we have somebody from Missouri, who just here, Cape Girardeau, can you step out? All right, step out.
All right, well then, thank you first for being here, and two, I want to ask you to please be an advocate for others in the room who may be interested. I'm sure a lot of folks are. All of us, we can sit up here and, tell you all day about the eligible criteria of our program and, all the information that's going to be in an announcement when it comes out. You'll see all that at grants.gov, but you have a special opportunity here to actually, have a conversation with other folks that are interested, and it does take a village. So please welcome anybody that may come up and ask you any questions about the program and get some real life experience and exposure to what that process is like, as well as what they have going on, what their projects are in their respective states and cities. All right. So on the screen, what you see here is just a few different highlights about our program. But you may ask kind of what these grants are. Who's eligible? What are they used for? All those questions. So vaguely speaking, this is a competitive grant program to support urban ag and innovative production activities across the nation through planning and implementation efforts. So when we talk about planning, we're talking about things like surveys, we're talking about assessments, feasibility studies, creating business plans, providing educational material, anything in that planning phase. And then when you jump over to implementation, we're talking about job training, mentoring, increasing food production or expanding operations for community gardens or farms that's already pre-existing, production of compost. That's what we're talking about for implementation. And there's also a lot more. So now, while the support of these grants lives in across many pathways, our most successful recipients we have encountered in the past through our funding periods have, one, showed targeted approach to addressing food and nutrition security in their communities, and two, provided access to food in areas where it's limited or unavailable, otherwise popularly known as food deserts, right? Okay, and then as for proposals, they must be designed in support to support multiple farmers and gardeners. So that means that individuals are not eligible to apply directly. Instead, the eligible entity must apply, and those eligible entities are going to be nonprofit organizations, that is with or without 501(c) status. You have local and tribal governments, and then any school serving K through 12 are also considered an eligible entity. We do have a QR code here on the screen, which should take you to the website that we do have designed for Urban Ag Innovative Production Grant Program. I think there's also a sheet going around that has all these codes too, just in case you guys can't zoom all the way in to catch that one on the screen. And then on the next slide, we will show you a quick map. Here's a map of all our recipients, just showing a range of the geographic areas that are represented, including states from Alaska to Puerto Rico, even U.S. territories like American Samoa. So I think we have one more poll. Yeah, we have one more poll. So next, going to go into compost and food waste reduction program. First, just wanted to ask folks, how are you addressing composting in your communities? So first one we got up here, is that working? Residential food scrap pickup program. Anyone participating in that? Okay, okay. All right. Anybody doing food scrap drop-off locations? Nice. Okay. All right. Any food recovery efforts? Donations, gleaning, education. Okay. Nice. All right. And who's doing none of the above? You know, should be a lot more hands up in there. All right. So for compost, food and waste reduction agreements, these provide funding to local governments, schools, and tribal governments to develop test strategies for planning and implementing compost and food waste reduction plans. So these projects can be in all community types, including urban, suburban, and rural communities. And the proposals must address at least one of the following. So starting off with producing compost, obviously, pretty simple. Techniques or strategies to improve soil quality, increasing rainwater absorption, reducing municipal food waste, diverting food waste from landfills, increasing access to compost for agricultural producers, reducing reliance on and limit the use of fertilizer, and or encourage waste management and permaculture business development. Okay, so getting into eligible criteria, so we got city and township governments, also county governments will be eligible, school districts also be eligible, and those can include independent school districts. We also have state designated Indian tribes are eligible, Native American tribal governments that are federally recognized, Native American tribal organizations other than federally recognized tribal governments, so this includes state designated Indian tribes. And last but not least is special district governments, so like your soil and water conservation districts, okay? And then I think we have another map that will show you who we have represented across the nation, U.S. states and territories for our compost agreements. Both of these maps are on the websites that are through the QR codes. We try to update these pretty regularly and just kind of show you where all of our projects are across the nation.
All right. So, got another poll. You know, the best made plans, right? When we started this out, we thought to ourselves, there's no way we can get up here and speak in front of these folks for 90 minutes about programs. We got to have something to break this up, right? So, who knows about People's Garden? All right, that's really good. Really good.
Nina would be so happy.
She would be very happy. So again, we have to give a shout out to our team member, Nina. She got caught up in Florida. She couldn't make it because of the storm that's going on right now. So I know it doesn't look like it, but Marcus and I are pinch hitting. We're having to cover some of these items for her. but we'll push on and do the best that we can. So it's good that everybody, quite a few of you know about the People's Garden Initiative. So this is actually started back in the first Obama administration, the first Bill Clinton administration, I should say. And the People's Garden has always been looked at as a way for communities to connect with one another. A lot of the theme that has been interwoven into what's going on here the next couple of days is all about people. It's all about communities. And so the People's Garden is one of those ways that we're hoping that communities all across the United States and in the territories can start coming together a little bit more. And so we have a network of community gardens, and that's one of the positives about this network. We don't have a lot of funding that we can, financial funding that we can get out, but the strength of the People's Garden is that it's a community of network. It's a network. And so all of the People's Garden, they come together. Nina has all of these different sessions where they can talk about best practices. They can talk about what's been working, what's not been working, share successes, and just amplify all of the great work that's going on across the country. And that's one of the things that our office really wants to do. There's so many great stories that are going on out there. And so Nina has done a wonderful job at making sure that we're highlighting all of that good work that's going on across the country. And so you see just a few of the different pictures that she's been able to gather as she's been doing this work. And so it's really easy to join. It's not really difficult. There's only 3 criteria to being able to be a part of the People's Garden. The first thing is to join. All you have to do is fill out a little bit of paperwork, a registration form. It goes to Nina. She accepts everybody. I don't think there's been anybody that she has turned away. Then the second thing is you have to commit to growing sustainably. Of course, with us working with the National Natural Resource Conservation Service, we're all about trying to help people to grow sustainably. And so then the third thing is about teaching, right? Because we want to get that next generation engaged with the land and with food. Simple. And so for those of you who don't have your People's Garden registered or want to be a part of it, please go to the QR code, sign up. It's very easy. As I mentioned, one of the big parts of it is a community network. And so it's actually on the Cooperative Extension website. And so this is also just another one of the ways that our office partners with other agencies across the USDA. The Cooperative Extension is underneath the National Institute of Food and Agriculture, NIFA. And so we have this website. It has all types of information. Nina, again, she's a technical whiz. She does a wonderful job at letting people know about the different opportunities, and they have all these different webinars that help people with their People's Garden. So, all right. So this is another thing that has been a recurring theme in both the lunch session as well as the comments from Senator Stabenow. And that is, we know that there's a big need out there to learn more about navigating local policies, right? I mean, there is just a tapestry of different zoning codes, permitting codes, and so we know that, we recognize that, and I think Congress recognized it too. And so one of the authorities that Congress gave to us was to be able to create basically a database for identifying common state and municipal best practices for navigating some of those local policies. And so I'm happy to introduce to some that we have a pilot project going on right now with Vermont Law School. We have representatives from Vermont Law School right there. They are helping us to put together a lot of materials, starting with the database and others, to kind of start to gather some of these different local policies and legislation too, from across the country, as a tool for people all over the country to be able to look it up and see how are others having successes with making sure that their zoning, permitting, and all of these different things are working in concert with one another to be able to support urban agriculture. And so we're really happy about that connection. There's 2 main components. There's going to be an advisory group to inform the development of policy resources, and then there's that database or that catalog that I talked about that's going to have all of those local policies in it. And they're doing a wonderful job there, and so we're really excited about that. So the audience for this is going to be policymakers, producers, community-based organizations, as well as USDA staff. So I didn't mention this earlier, but I should have. One of the things that we're doing as an office is not just you external stakeholders that we're talking to. There's a lot of USDA staff that didn't realize that USDA actually does support urban producers. And so this tool is just another way that our office is trying to help also USDA to understand what tools are available to our stakeholders. All right. So the deliverables are going to include that city policy database. There's going to be a comparative analysis of policies across cities. There's going to be a UAIP Policy 101 document. And then there's going to be some detailed briefs and an evaluation at the end of that process. I know I'm probably not doing this the justice that I should, but we also have Liz from Vermont Law School who knows a lot more about it. And so if there's some additional questions about that, she'll be here to help me to cover some of those questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Throw you right, I got to throw you right under the bus. Lalani Nelson, also, I don't know if I don't think I've met Lalani, but she's also one of the contacts for this particular agreement. So. Oh, it's just another slide talking about I will mention this too. So also, the National Ag Library, the Ag Marketing Service, the Food and Nutrition Service, as well as our office are part of this collaborative. This actually started out as the brainchild of AMS. And so we saw the benefit of it. We kind of jumped in and kind of funded it and got it rolling. But AMS is going to come back in on this endeavor because they want to really get deeper into that advisory part of it and try to let the public have a greater say into what they think some of these policies and changes need to be. So definitely interested to see how that's going to go. All right, and just a couple of QR codes. Oh, yes. And let me also mention the Promise of Urban Ag. Okay, so the AMS also has done a tremendous amount of work in this project called the Promise of Urban Agriculture. And so the Promise of Urban Agriculture was all about surveying commercial urban ag farms in several different locations across the nation. And as a result of that survey work that they did, they have put together a bunch of trainings. So definitely want to give a plug for that. We also have Maria here if there's going to be questions about that. But they have those trainings open and they're available to producers and others through December. And it's all targeted at helping, number one, helping local policymakers understand policy and how they can be effective at managing all of the different components of their policies, but then also to producers so that you can learn how to be a better advocate for or with your local municipalities and encouraging them to be able to update their policies to help urban ag. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn back to Marcus. He's going to talk about the Federal Advisory Committee.
All right, thanks, Leslie. So we don't have a poll, but just by a quick show of hands, who's familiar with our Federal Advisory Committee or just Federal Advisory Committees in general? Okay, good. A lot of you. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, I'll just take a couple seconds just to kind of paint a quick picture for you at a 30,000 foot level. So Federal Advisory Committees are created in a few different ways, but primarily through executive order to advise the president or by statute through Congress to advise the secretary or agency head of the federal department. Now, the members who are primarily appointed to these committees are everyday working class citizens, just like yourselves, who have experience or expertise in a particular industry. So what I like to always tell folks is that, if you really want to make a difference in, public service, but you don't want to, dedicate 40 to 50 hours of your week of your life to do so, like us as federal employees, you can apply to be on a Federal Advisory Committee. It's the Federal Advisory Committee Act that has created a formal pathway for the federal government to recognize the experience and expertise from the members of the public to help shape and improve federal programs and policy. Now there are around 1,000 to choose from across the federal government. USDA is responsible for about 150 of those that are active. And even if you're not an appointed member, you can still make a difference. You can still get involved, and I'll go into that a little bit more here in just a second. But as for just an overview of our committee, so our committee has 12 members that advise the Secretary of Agricultural Development and Policies and Outreach related to indoor or other emerging agricultural practices. And that's pretty vague, right? So Congress has outlined 3 specific duties. So number 1 is developing recommendations on policies, initiatives, and outreach. Now this is going to be for programs coming out of our office or UAIP or any other USDA office relative to urban and integrated production programs. Some of the recommendations that have already come out of the committee are from programs that we already administer. Most recently is our CFW, our Compost Food Waste Reduction Program. But they've also made recommendations thus far, which is in their first final report submitted last year on USDA's SNAP program. They've also made recommendations for FSA microloan program so far. Second duty up is evaluate and review ongoing research and extension activities. This one is going to deal a lot with the education and the extension space. And then last but not least is identifying new and existing barriers. Now, this can be anything from making sure folks have access to something as small as a website, all the way up to access to land, access to technical assistance, zoning issues, any USDA grant and agreement programs. These are all barriers that the committee has talked about in the past and has prioritized as recommendations they want to send up to the Secretary. Again, we have that QR code here on the screen. That's going to take you to the committee's designated webpage. And on the next slide, you'll see just a quick snapshot of what our website offers. So here is where you can find additional background information. We have a meetings tab where you can find access to previous meeting materials. So that's going to be anything from meeting minutes to recordings, copies of our agenda, Federal Register notice, so on and so forth. We also have additional resources. This is where you can find a copy of the committee's final report, as I just mentioned a few seconds ago. It is their first final report, has 14 recommendations total that was submitted last fall. So if anyone's interested in taking a deeper dive into the recommendations that have actually already been sent, please go take a look at that report. And then on this next slide, we have biographies. So the website also has biographies, but here's just a quick snapshot of our committee members here. 8 of which are our inaugural members that were originally appointed to the original group, and then we have 4 new members who have joined us as early as this year. So below everyone's name, you'll see the industries that they represent. Altogether, you'll see that 4 members are representing agriculture production. So we got 2 folks for urban ag, we got 2 folks for innovative production, we got 2 folks representing higher education or extension. We have 1 person representing nonprofit. We got somebody representing business and economic development. We have someone for supply chain, finance, entity, and last but not least, we also have 2 additional folks for representing related experience. Now, I won't go into the specific roles that each of these members hold outside of the committee, but I will be doing a disservice if I didn't do a shout out to at least 2 of our members who are actually participating in the conference. So we got Jerry Ann Hebron. She's an urban producer on our committee. I know she's probably back there somewhere. Hey, Jerry. Everyone say, hey, Jerry. Yes. And we thank you so much for hosting us yesterday at your farm. It was such a pleasure. For me personally, that was what I was looking forward to most out of this trip for me. So thank you so much, Jerry. And Kiana Mickey. I don't know if Kiana is in the room. She might be downstairs. Okay, but you heard from Kiana. She was doing the, I think the fireside chat earlier today. Kiana Mickey is the Executive Director for the New York City Mayor's Office for Urban Agriculture. And if I didn't mention it, Jerry Ann Hebron, she's the Executive Director for Oakland Avenue Farms right here in Detroit. So I just want to do those two honorable mentions. And then what I also failed to mention, Kiana, she's also the co-chairperson of our committee. So if you do happen to see them around, I know Jerry Ann's in here, but Kiana's not, just be sure to say hello. I'm sure they would appreciate that. Okay, we can go into the next one. Okay, all right, so enough about the members. Today is about you all. We're here for you. We definitely want to maximize this opportunity, make sure you all get the most value as you possibly can while you are here. One way that you can do that is by attending our committee meetings. So our committee meetings, they're virtual. They're held virtual for the public. That is how you all can attend. Sometimes we do hybrid formats of in-person and virtual meetings, but attendance for the public will always be virtual. But this is a fully transparent process. It's designed to be that way by law. So during these public meetings, that is where you can hear and see just how the members deliberate, which topics they're considering, what they're prioritizing. It's a fully transparent process. By law, the committee is required to meet 3 times a year. They have actually met 3 times already this year. We are planning a 4th meeting for the fall. We're looking at some dates in October. Once everything is finalized, you can find out information through our website. Again, we got a QR code right here on the screen for you to get that information. Last meeting was held last month, July 11th. And like I said, again, the committee, we are planning to hold a 4th meeting in the fall. You do have to pre-register to confirm your attendance for these meetings. That is how you receive access to the Zoom link, so you can attend those. Now, as far as the announcements go and how you find out, primary ways is going to be through the Federal Register. If you don't subscribe there, you can subscribe to farmers.gov, which is where we send our newsletter out, which is how most people get access to our announcements. All right. So the second major way that you can get involved is taking a step further by providing public comments. Now, this one is critical, and I'm going to echo one thing that Senator Stegner mentioned earlier today is to tell your truth. You can tell that truth through this transparent and public process through our Federal Advisory Committee. They do take on comments, and they do take those comments very serious. So comments can be accepted before, during, or after a public meeting. Typically, the comment period will open up on the day that we announce it in the Federal Register. And we typically will close that off up to 2 weeks after the public meeting takes place. We accept those comments in written or oral format. One thing I do have to mention about the oral comments is that they are not accepted in every single meeting. Typically, this is contingent on if we have time available on an agenda, but written comments, however, are always going to be accepted, okay? And those are accepted through the committee's dedicated email box, which is Urban Agriculture Federal Advisory Committee at USDA.gov. Again, we cringe every time we got to say this one too. We know it's long, but trust me, if you send your comments through that email, it comes directly to me. We'll take care of it, trust me, okay? All right, so just a few more highlights I want to share about this process and ways you can get involved. So as I mentioned, the committee does take these comments serious. So for oral comments, that is during a public meeting, those are recorded, so that's on official record. And again, with the inbox, we monitor that on a weekly basis. We turn those over to the committee chairperson. They take those back to their closed meetings, which is what they use to prepare for the public meetings, and that's how they discuss, what are they going to prioritize, which ones are going to get a response, that sort of thing. Which brings me to number 2. The comments must be aligned with the committee's mission and duties. Okay, they really can't do anything with your comments if they're not aligned statutorily with their duties. So if you go sending us, comments about why USDA isn't doing enough about mad cow disease and the bird flu, I'm sorry, the committee just can't help you with that. That does not align with their commission and duties. It's an important topic. It's a very important topic, but our committee just, isn't designed for that one. Like I said earlier, USDA has around 150 committees that are active. Each and every one of them has their own mission, their own purpose, their own duties. So, if you do send us your comments, they don't align with the committee's duties. That doesn't mean that, it's going to go on deaf ears. We might just have to route you in a different direction, okay? All right. Last but not least, just wanted to share, don't be afraid, don't hesitate to, speak up, tell that truth. I think, at least what I've taken away so far from this conference is that there seems to be a theme of there being a disconnect between the people and the policy, right? So the Federal Advisory Committee is certainly one of the ways that we're building the framework to, help the producers, the folks with the boots on the ground, and kind of bridge that gap. So don't be afraid, don't hesitate to share your concerns, show up to these public meetings, and have a voice. You do have that. Now, I will say the issues that they're raising to the USDA Secretary, they most certainly impact you all. They have been appointed, for that reason. Each and every one of the committee members, they're a representation of you all in some way, shape, or form. So we definitely want you just to take advantage of this transparent process. The Federal Advisory Committee Act, again, this is the law. You all have a say-so, so we want your voices to be heard. And again, that QR code there is where you can sign up for all the updates about the committee. Again, we are planning that 4th meeting in the fall. That's also where you can find out if you want to participate, be a committee member yourself. We've already closed the nomination period for this year. We open it up every summer typically from May to July. So we may or may not see a change in committee memberships next year. We're going through that peer review process right now, but when we do open up nominations for summer of 2025, you'll be able to find out through signing up for those email updates right there. Okay? I think that's it. All right, I'm going to turn it back over to Leslie.
All right, so we're probably not going to get through this slide deck. so I think we're on slide 33 out of 69, so let me just put it here now. For anybody that wants a copy of our slide deck, we'll definitely give it to you. All of our materials have these QR codes on it that will take you to our website. We have email, as Marcus has indicated. If you send an email to our email, you will hear back from us. Absolutely hear back from us. It's funny, I was out in Charleston a couple of weeks ago for a conference. And you would be surprised to hear from so many people that say, man, I tried to contact somebody from USDA, they never did contact me back. Well, we promise. I can say here in front of my colleague, we promise. If you send us an email, we will respond to it. It may not be within that day or the next day. We will respond to it. All right? So I think what I want to do with the time that we have left, we've talked a lot about who we are. We've talked a lot about what we do. We talked a lot about where we're located within USDA. But I want to take a step back and really talk a little bit more about why our office is doing what we do. And for anybody who plays golf, you will know about this that I'm showing up on the screen right here. The old folks where I'm from used to tell me why you do something is always more important than what you do. And the reason why we're involved with this work is because we know it can be simple sometimes, but it's not always easy. when you look at this slide here, and for those of you who ever played golf, golf is the most simple game in the world. All you have to do is take a ball and hit it into a hole, off the tee box into the hole, in the less amount of strokes that you can do it. Simple. Anybody who's ever picked up a golf club, no, it is not easy though. And so when you look at the guy on the left, we all know Tiger Woods, one of the most famous golfers in the world. He makes what's simple look easy. But then there's the other side. And for those of you who don't know, that's Charles Barkley on the right side. If you want to see something funny, please YouTube Charles Barkley bad golf swing. Man, he can make something that is simple look really, really difficult. A couple of months ago, so what's my point? A couple of months ago, we were at the Secretary's Honor Awards, and he made, I thought, what was a really profound statement. He said that in America, we're in a very unique situation because we are a food secure nation. And that every nation is not in that situation. Not only are we a food secure nation, but we are able to also feed other nations. I thought that was profound. But while we're a food secure nation, we know that right here in a food secure nation, we have neighborhoods and communities that are not. And so I raised that because I think I can speak for the folks that are in our office. We're really about people. A lot of the other agencies and offices, as you've already heard, within the USDA, they have statutory authorities that were written at a time when urban agriculture wasn't really a big thing. And so we really take pride in the notion that the work that we're doing, we really care about people and about the communities that those people serve. And that's why we're going to respond to every email that we get. So, enough of that. When we talk to folks, the second thing that we think about is, what's your why? What's your why? So that's our why. What's your why? The NRCS has a long history of being a planning organization, and we kind of come from that same vein too. I mean, one of the first things we always talk to people about is, what's your vision? You know, there are a lot of USDA programs out here. To be honest with you, there are thousands. But the question is, what's your vision? What are you trying to accomplish with your organization and what your community is trying to do? And then our office can then help steer you in the direction that may be able to support the work that you and the vision that you have. All right. Marcus has already mentioned this, so I'll kind of fly through this. We engage with stakeholders, both internal and external. One of the things we haven't mentioned yet, we also collaborate with quite a number of other federal agencies. So it's not just USDA. We have, again, the unique situation where we work with a lot of other federal partners. Internal USDA coordination, I already touched this, so I won't hit this a lot more, but we do quite a bit of cross-marketing of programs, so it's not just our office's programs. And actually, as I get down closer to the end of this presentation, I'm going to go through some of those other programs that other agencies have. We do policy recommendations, not only through the Federal Advisory Committee, but we also have an internal advisory committee just within USDA that is also able to look at some of these deep policy questions and look for ways that we can update those policies in order to help urban producers. And then we do USDA training. I already mentioned that. You would be surprised, but not everybody in USDA recognizes that we do this work, and so it's always a pleasure to help people understand that. All right, technical financial assistance. So I didn't want to take for granted that everybody knows this or didn't know this in the audience, so I just want to hit this quickly too. When we talk about financial assistance, when we talk about technical assistance, the biggest way that our office, I think the biggest way that the USDA helps people is really through technical assistance. You know, even though we're a $200 billion a year outlay agency, the reality is that's still not enough money to support every single organization that's out there. There's no way. And so technical assistance is really the largest way that we're able to do that. So with technical assistance, that's usually your written information. That's when you request stuff from us. That's research trials. I don't know how many of you all out there are aware, but the Ag Research Service has a whole library of information on every single conceivable crop and cropping methodology that's out there. And it's free for anybody to use. There's publications, there's listening sessions, we do lectures, we do web-based webinars, we have trainings and tools. So all of these things are free to the public. Anybody can view them to help them gain more skills and more knowledge to be able to do the work that they're doing. And then, of course, we have the financial assistance piece, which is the money. Everybody is usually interested in the money piece. But there's a lot of different aspects of even financial assistance. In one of the earlier sessions, there was a question about grants and why we couldn't do more grants and why we can't work with more nonprofits. Listen, USDA has thousands of programs. And financial assistance programs, there's 370 of them. And they come in all different forms. There's grants out there's agreements out there's loan guarantees, there's insurance, there's disaster relief out there as well. All right, another poll. So here's another important question too. So along with that information about technical and financial assistance, what we find, or what I have found personally, as I'm talking to different groups, they're like, well, we didn't know about that opportunity. We didn't know about that opportunity, and that's true. We know that USDA has a ways to go in terms of making sure that everybody has access to the information and are able to have these opportunities. So one of the things we wanted to learn from you all is how are you getting information about different opportunities with the USDA, whether it's financial or technical assistance? Is anybody in here a part of the social media? Are you all Instagram or some of these USDA social media platforms? But just by raising hands, is anybody connected? Okay, so that's one way. What about newsletters? Newsletter folks, okay. What about partner organizations? Do you get most of your information from third parties? So a few people there. Okay, good to know. How much stuff do we have here? Okay, got a little while. All right, so as I mentioned, there's a lot of technical assistance that comes in the form of research and brochures. I just wanted to highlight a couple of them. I won't hit them too hard, but let me talk about the one in the middle in particular, the best practice guide for water circularity and controlled environment ag operations and why that's important. So the NRCS was able to use its Conservation Innovation Grant Program to actually fund a third party, the Resource Innovation Institute. They put together this really wonderful document that helps small producers who want to be able to do controlled environment agriculture to improve their operation. This is a perfect example of a resource that you can just go online, pick it up, figure out how to implement CEA on your smaller operation, and figure out how you need to use water to save money on that operation. And there are many, many others. As I mentioned, the Ag Research Service, they have all types of information. Please, if you don't know about this, please go there. They also have 90 locations around the country. You can pick up the phone and call ARS, any of those 90 locations, and ask them questions. And they can help you with your operation. They have a lot of different examples. Throughout this presentation, the other thing we wanted to do is give you all some concrete examples of how these different programs are being used. So ARS, they have a program that's called the Grand Challenge, where they're developing every aspect of doing tomatoes within controlled environments. And so the first picture there is an agreement with ARS and a group called Amplify Ag out of South Carolina. And they are figuring ways to use saline and brackish water to do production indoors. It's fascinating work. And so their whole goal is to try to save fresh water for human consumption, because we know crops don't need to have 100% crystalline water. So it's a really marvelous experience. All right, NIFA, we talked a little bit about this. Of course, we have been partnering here more closely within the last, I would say, 3 to 6 months with our partners with NIFA. I don't know how many of you all out there knew it, but the National Urban Extension Leaders, we just met in Nashville about a month ago. But this group is specifically there to try to help urban producers. There's a bunch of them. There's about probably 100 to 200 of these folks. And so we're working with them to try to make sure that they're getting to our folks, the people that we know, our stakeholders. But there's quite a few of these folks out there across the landscape that can help you with your individual questions and problems out there. The Forest Service had quite a bit of technical assistance too. Not only do we have urban service centers, not only does ARS have locations, But the Forest Service has, I don't know if you all knew that, but the Forest Service has about 15 urban field stations that also do technical assistance that you can call. And there's also tools, so the Vibrant Cities Lab as well as the iTree Lab, these are tools that you can use to figure out where to put trees and find out what the impact on the community will be. Again, some of that technical assistance that's free to anybody, for anybody to pick up and use. And then our document that Brian was trying to give to everybody, I'm hoping that it was in everybody's bag, but we're really proud of this document. This was our office's doing, I think we can take credit for it. But this was the first time USDA had ever brought together a pamphlet that talked about the 45 or 50 programs that were most useful for urban and innovative producers, which is also a part of our mission. So, you know, it doesn't go into full detail, but it's enough to give you a snapshot to figure out whether or not which of these programs may align with our vision. So please, feel free to take those with you. Wow. Here's just another example of a statutory authority that we have. We're also about to begin a pilot project with Market Maker and Illinois Farm Bureau. And this is all about connecting urban producers with farm banks and new markets. So Congress gave us this authority, and what Congress was really thinking about was the fact that urban producers also have a role to play in helping support food banks and food pantries, but there wasn't a really good way to connect them. You know, of course, a lot of food banks, they're looking for stuff in huge bulk. They're looking for semi-trailers full of stuff. And so we're trying to work with Market Maker, or we will be working with them, as well as Illinois Farm Bureau, to try to use these new virtual tools to be able to connect farmers with these pantries who have a need. So it's kind of almost like a matching, or I don't know, it's a dating site. So, anyway, but they match up, what they do is to match up people who have a need, an industrial need, with producers who actually have product. And so we're really excited, or at least I'm really excited about the potential for this. And the reason why we're working with those two groups is because they already have, I don't know if Tammy Willis is in here from Illinois, NRCS. We're looking at leveraging, leveraging an agreement that they have with Farm Bureau of Illinois and trying to build upon that and open up new market opportunities for these folks. NRCS, technical assistance, you all know about that. I think most people in the room know about that. NRCS does conservation planning to help folks with their urban conservation needs. Just an example there in Fort Worth, Texas, called Veterans Produce. They work with a group to build high tunnels as well as micro irrigation to help out their operations. So another concrete example of how a program is being used. You all know about the service centers. I talked about cooperative extension. And then resources from OUAIP. I would encourage you all, everybody that's a producer or anybody that's looking for opportunities, please sign up for our newsletter.
Please.
Please sign up for that newsletter. It is a really great newsletter. I have to give a shout out to Nina Bhattacharya. I really wish you all could have met her. She does a fabulous job sifting through probably 100 different newsletters, pulling out all of those different pieces that are going to be relevant to urban producers. And then we also have the innovative production website, same thing. And this one is a little bit more geared towards innovative producers, but we know that urban producers can be both. And then, of course, the People's Garden Guide. And there are a bunch of other newsletters. So, as I said already before, right, we work across the federal government, not just USDA. And so we're linked into a bunch of different newsletters. And if you connect with us, we'll let you know all of those newsletters too if you want to fill up your inbox with newsletters. But if you don't, sign up for ours and you can get the distilled version. All right. Another poll. Okay, the tough question. How many folks in here have actually applied for financial assistance from USDA? I'm not going to ask how many people got it approved. I'm going to ask how many have applied. So for those of you all who did not apply, are you interested in applying?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Please talk to us. All right. I guess, so for the last few minutes, I'm not going to go through all of these. I mean, it's too big. And I'm not a subject matter expert in all these different programs anyway, so I would just be giving you a general overview. But I do want to leave us some time for questions. So maybe for the next few minutes, I'll just run through a couple of programs that you may not be aware of, because I know the question was being asked about grants. So maybe I'll try to hit those really hard, and then we'll go to Q&A. All right? That's all right.
If I could jump in too real quick, for the folks that answered yes to being interested in applying for USDA financial assistance, but you haven't yet, if you don't mind sharing, has there been anything that's been holding you back from doing so? Is it more information that you need, interested in sharing with the group? I seen one hand back there.
So on some of the grants, it does require, we're a small nonprofit, we don't get any funding again from Las Vegas, which receives the least amount of federal funding nationally, and then we are a Black woman-led organization, so we really not get no money. Being honest. So it has been having to do the 3 years of research that's required on a lot of the grants, and not having the assistance in capacity. You know what I mean? Like if there was technical assistance is awesome and it's great. You know what I mean? But having someone that could be like assigned to us for the duration of this process, this application process, would be very, very helpful. Rather than having to go back in and then try to talk to, hopefully you get the same person, you know what I mean? But you guys are kind of compartmentalized, so sometimes someone else responds and you gotta go back and start it all over, and that is difficult when, you know what I mean, you're a farmer, you're trying to get yield, you're trying to harvest, you're trying to collect seeds. I teach programming, I also run all of the email marketing, all of the social media marketing, all of the website development. I had to learn a lot of skills. So there's our organization that's fed, I produced over 1,000 pounds my first year by myself. We fed over 500 people in the state of Nevada, and we have kept over 192 people housed, because we do housing as well. And we are 2 people. Our organization is 2 people. Wow.
You're hitting the nail on the head. So let me just offer this. USDA has at least 3 programs that I know of that actually have programs that will help write grants for you, as well as help. Yeah, this is true. So one of them is the Risk Management Agency for their risk education and training program. These are just a few examples now. Don't get me wrong, not all USDA programs do this, but this is a few examples. So RMA, they actually have a contract to contract a third-party vendor to help historically underserved organizations to actually prepare their grants. And then if they are selected, to actually go through the process of program deliverables and going through that whole process. NRCS, for the first time this year, actually did the same for its Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Okay, and then I know that the NIFA, their National Institute of Food and Agriculture, for their community project program, community food project program, they also do the same thing. So you're exactly right. We know that that is a problem. That's probably not something that our office can alleviate, but there are, USDA knows, and there are some groups that are starting to make moves to try to alleviate some of those problems.
If I can add to that, Jerry, I don't want to put you on the spot here. Again, the Federal Advisory Committee, this is a topic that's near and dear to their heart. They are working on putting together recommendations to help streamline the USDA grant and agreement making process, focusing on certain mission areas where there are some challenges. We know that the systems we utilize, which are government-wide, are cumbersome and difficult to understand. We may not be able to change those systems, but we can provide tools. So our office, for example, for our grant program, which is quite frankly one of the most flexible grant programs that's out there, it's also a program by statutory design, does not require a cost share for the UAIP grant program. But we put a webinar out every year to kind of walk interested individuals or parties, eligible parties, through the process. really walking them through step by step, what does it take to get their applications in? And we have seen as a result of that, the quality of the applications has increased significantly. The number of applications has also increased significantly. So we like to think that some of those tools we're providing are helping those individuals that want to apply, but we're also talking to other agencies about this. Like, hey, something as simple as a webinar where you have staff just pretending they're a user or an applicant, walking them through the process. Maybe holding public meetings, virtual public meetings, in advance of the release of a notification of funding opportunity. If a program is competitive versus non-competitive, that's typically a statutory decision. If it's competitive, there's certain things we can and can't do once that notification of funding opportunity comes out. But you've touched on something that I think our Federal Advisory Committee wants to hear more of, and more examples of those barriers that you've encountered, which again gets back to what Marcus was saying, the importance of putting those public comments forward so that the committee can hear from you, and then the committee can decide how they want to take up that issue.
Absolutely.
No, I think it's all good, but just to kind of, her point in some of what you said, the tools are great, but I think it varies county by county, in terms of how passionate that field office is in outreaching to people, their stakeholders. So how can USDA offices know their stakeholders better? Like she was saying, if they know there's a program that could benefit, somebody like her, she's under everything, trying to farm, and a lot of times you don't have time to, go through all the emails, meet the deadlines, and back to Leslie's point about how we learn about these programs. Most of the time, it's here where we can directly talk to you, ask the questions, and get that one-on-one, assistance that we need.
Well, speaking just about my office and our grant programs, our staff actually do that. So they will provide that one-on-one resource in advance of us announcing the program. And we certainly encourage that. We have those links in our newsletter about how you can put a question forward to our generic email address. And then somebody on our grants and agreements team, you saw the 3 individuals on the screen earlier, they'll get back to you. We also, and again, it's a process. And we know it's a long, cumbersome process. As I think you heard somebody say earlier today, it's glacial. It takes the U.S. government a long time to move an inch. One of the things that USDA has done by putting putting urban service centers in selected cities, we have some staff sitting right in front of you and behind you, as a matter of fact, at New Orleans and Albuquerque offices, is working with those staff to help them become more conversant in the process of the program, so that you can walk into that urban service center, not just learn about what the project that their particular agency is providing, but also just basic resources on how to connect into the USDA network to learn more about our programs, our requirements, and some of the limitations associated with those programs. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Hey, I just wanted to, I wanted to add a little bit more insight to your question, because it's a very good question. What we've also done within, I'll speak from the NRCS lens, within NRCS is to charge all of our state conservationists with being able to build out an outreach strategy that would include urban ag as a key initiative. So when they're looking at going in and doing the outreach, the engagement, and the support, we're able to bring you guys in as key stakeholders to make sure that we've identified where the barriers and the tipping points within your respective communities and groups. So now as we're building out funding mechanisms and outreach and support, we can truly get to the need that has been identified. We're also wanting to make sure that as we're having the conversations back with our district conservationists, as well as those outreach coordinators that are focusing in more on urban agriculture, we're gonna also be encouraging you guys to join into our locally led process. That's key. The local working groups are essential. As I'm looking at our illustrious state conservationists in the great state of Illinois, it's critical for you to have your voice in that space. Our state conservationists have quarterly meetings, but then also too, coming in and allowing you to say, these are priority resource concerns. So not just looking at our larger row crops, but then also coming back in what we're doing in urban ag and small ag, because we recognize that those coexist within the same space. So we really want to bring that forward. So now it comes in as recommendations to our state conservationists. If there's a new scenario that we need to adjust for practices and how we're getting that adopted, if the payment rates are not equal, or what we're seeing are more in alignment with what now is being done real time for your adoptions and implementation, support, training, engagements, whatever it may be, we really want to make sure that we're bringing you into that space to be able to address those needs and start preparing going into our new fiscal year. When we have those conversations outside of that time frame, this is where it becomes a little bit of a challenge, because you guys are saying, hey, can't we make the adjustments now? Once we start going in and we've adopted that payment schedule and the rate and the timing and the implementation for that year, that's locked in for the one fiscal year. We're now making decisions, preparing going into fiscal year 25, or October 1 through September 30th, coming here in just a few weeks. So we say all that to say, local working groups, engagement back with your state conservationists and the state technical advisory committee. And if you've not had those engagements with those outreach coordinators, district conservationists, soil conservationists, whomever may be those points of contact, I'll be here. We'll make sure that we get the information for you so you can have your key point of contact in your state.
Yeah, no, I think part of my question was answered. I've applied for federal funding, and I feel like grants.gov and the application process is not people-centered. I know you also know it is people-centered, but I think it's designed to make you want to blow your brains out. And so, I mean, and I love that you all have tools to walk us through that process. But like the woman back there was saying, you know, we're a nonprofit in Lexington, Kentucky, Seedleaf. We have 10 gardens, 32 acres of farmland. I'm out there as the director also doing a lot of that work. It's hard to dedicate that time to the webinar to sit and sort of figure it out. And it just, there has to be a more user-friendly way. So my question was about just the application process and it being something extraordinarily mind-blowingly difficult. And I have a PhD and I struggle with it. So this is what I just wanted to point out.
Thank you. Point very well taken. Welcome with that. All right.
Question, could you all talk a bit about cooperative agreements? And I guess, is there a difference, or what is the difference between grant agreements versus cooperative agreements? How does that work? Any opportunities within urban ag?
Is there a specific cooperative agreement you're interested in? Because
I'm not sure.
okay, well, there's, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, generally speaking, a grant is funding that's given to an entity, and the federal government doesn't have a lot of input on it. They're expecting you to be the subject matter expert. They're expecting you to do the work. They're giving you the money. They want you to do the work. When it comes to cooperative agreements, that usually comes with a
mutual benefit.
a match. It usually comes with a match that has to come from the organization. So it could be as little as 10%. It can go all the way up to 50%, depending on what the agreement is. But with an agreement, it's really a partnership. So the federal government is actually walking with you to get the project that you are trying to get done and accomplish. That's the biggest difference.
Like, is there, you know, there's mission, proposed, like time frames for grants versus cooperative agreements? Is it open?
It's program dependent.
It varies from program to program. Some of it could be set by statute, so Congress might make that determination. Others are set by agencies running those programs. That's one of the difficulties of navigating all these programs, the complexity of USDA being such a large department, and every agency having different programs, some on different funding cycles. A lot of it is really dependent on what Congress appropriates, when they appropriate, and the language that's written into the Farm Bill. It's not the answer I know that most people want to hear, but that's the truth of it.
Quick question concerning I think you guys call it the market maker, but it's basically tying small and minority businesses tied to the food bank. It's my understanding that was, just introduced in the last Farm Bill or the last few years. Do you guys have any empirical data on how successful that's been? Because I'm hearing here in Houston, here in Houston, I should say, the person reached out to us, but he mentioned to me that other food banks are not reaching out and finding them. So I just want to get an idea of how successful that's been, because it really makes a lot of sense, but if it's not being utilized, then they need to figure it out a little bit more.
Yeah, excellent question. So the empirical data right now is 0. We haven't started. It's still going to be a pilot that we're going to starting in Illinois. But your point is well taken. And that's why we're trying to approach it, because we know, listen, those food banks are looking for big shipments. So we're trying to start at a very small level with a group that is already doing this work in the Chicago metro area.
It's a clarification on the
agreements. If it is successful, then we're going to try to branch it out to other cities to see how successful we can be. So it's a good question. We haven't started yet. We have 5 more minutes, so Carlos.
Yeah, no, Leslie, I was just gonna give a clarification on the agreements, on the cooperative agreements. You don't necessarily have to have a match like the dollars amount, you can have in kind. You can put in as much money as you want, but basically, the term of cooperative is the government is buying, and was a mutual benefit. We're buying into your idea, you're buying into our, our mission and so forth, but you don't have to put that much money upfront or just in time. Contribution agreement is where you have the match, which is 50-50. Or in the case of organizations that cannot provide that match and they can justify it, you can go with 25%. It's more of and by the way, I'm state conservationist in California, that's why I'm speaking here. The agreements, it's more of a contracting term more than what it means and so forth. At the end of the day, it's just basically sitting down with NRCS and seeing what is there to offer and how we can be of support. How can we mutually support each other? Because we always look in not just for our benefit, but of course your benefit as well.
And if I wanted to do that, I would come to the state conservationist.
What's that?
I would go to the state conservationist to propose.
You can go to the state conservation, you can go to me in California, or you can go to any of my assistant for field operations.
Okay.
And Tammy's here, in Illinois, I know there were others, state conservation available. So sometimes you can offer what we call an unsolicited request for funding. And that's totally acceptable. You say, hey, I have this concept, I evaluate it, and I have some discretionary authority to go enter into an agreement. Or we have our notice of funding, or request for funding, those are published. Those are specifically for either technical assistance, urban act, and so forth. And every state publishes those.
So let me just jump in there one more time too. So hopefully we're not confusing you too much, but let me be clear. There are more cooperative agreements and grants than just NRCS.
Yeah, true.
Just put up here. I didn't get to this part, but OMB has put out a really nice website that actually for the first time, I think, too, talks about all of the financial assistance programs across the whole federal government. And so you can go to this site. On this example, I actually checked off the Department of Agriculture. There are 371 programs, financial assistance programs.
For USDA. And all 371 of those have different statutory authorities, they have different agency policy, they have different, as Brian was mentioning, they have different periods of performance, and then on top of all of that, just because Congress authorizes it, doesn't mean that they're gonna give appropriations for it. So some of the programs may be every year, some of them may be every other year. So it is complex, but there are, again, I hate to say this, the tools. Go to these different websites, and the beauty of this particular website is it allows you to do downloads so that you can do your own analysis and figure out which of these different programs aligns with your vision. All right?
I know we're about to wrap up, but I just wanted to thank everyone for coming today. Like I mentioned earlier, we're a brand new office. We're still figuring our way we need to hear from you. We have, I think, somewhere up on this very long presentation, we have an email address there we go. We have some QR codes and email addresses. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about issues you're encountering working with USDA. We are housed in the Natural Resources Conservation Service, but we are a department-wide office. If you have questions about AMS or NIFA or ARS, you can come to our office and we can connect you to the subject matter experts at those various agencies. If you have a question about NRCS, we'll probably direct you to the state that you reside in or that you operate in, because they will have the best, most reliable information for you at that local level, because it is different from state to state. The types of programs, the level of funding, the different payment scenarios that Casey mentioned. Likewise, the same thing with the Farm Services Agency, even with rural development. Their policies and programs will be slightly different from state to state, because it's really meant to be locally led and locally driven. What's good for New Mexico might be very different than what's good for Massachusetts. The other thing I wanted to leave with all of you is one of the big parts of our job in my office and my staff is making sure that we connect urban and innovative producers with one another. I think you heard from Senator Stabenow the importance of building a national movement. A lot of urban producers do a great job working with one another locally within their city, maybe even the region. We don't see enough connection across the country. We need that. We can help you with that. That's what we want to do. We're trying to provide platforms through that People's Gardening Initiative, through the quarterly calls that we have with those entities that have been fortunate enough to compete for and receive our grant programs. Our job is to connect people, and that's how we build the momentum behind this movement of urban agriculture and innovative production. And you guys play a big part in that. Continue to dialogue. We're not always going to be able to afford these big conferences, but through the power of virtual relationships, we can keep these relations going and build that and learn from one another. There are incredible lessons learned coming out of every state and territory as it pertains to urban agriculture and innovative production. There's one little story I wanted to say. I was in New Mexico in September. Shout out to New Mexico, because Yes Housing's here, one of our grant recipients. But I met with one of our other grant recipients who we were supposed to go to the farm that we were funding, and he was late because his flight got in late. He was in Boston for his son's graduation. But he also said the other thing I was doing when I was in Boston was I went and visited one of the other UAIP grant recipients in Boston, because they're doing something that's so innovative, introducing indigenous food harvesting and storage practices. And in New Mexico, we have a very different climate, but we're also trying to integrate some of those indigenous practices into what our farm is doing. And I just thought, this is great. I can step back. This is exactly what I wanted to see. This operator in New Mexico is talking to an operator in Massachusetts, and they're comparing stories and learning from one another. We don't need the federal government to solve those problems for you. Those answers are there with all of you, and we just need to share that information with one another. And we're going to end on this note, so I'm going to turn it over to Leslie.
All right, so we presented a lot of different concepts, ideas to you all. This last poll is about, what do you want to hear about? We talked about technical assistance. We talked a little bit about our partnerships and our networks. We talked a little bit about financial assistance. Do you all want to hear about job opportunities, employment? Please let us know so that next time we speak to a group, we'll know how to tailor our comments to reflect what you want, rather than what we think you might want. So. All right, with that, thank you all. Please talk to any one of us.